Welcome, everybody. I wanted to do a brief overview of what the classroom looks like for the birth assistant program. I get a lot of questions. What are we covering? What are we doing and stuff? And so I thought it might be nice if you could just kind of get a peek into what it looks like in the classroom. The course has 9 modules and it's broken into 3 parts, part 1, part 2, and part 3. 3 modules with each. So this is the first 3 modules. And there's the general materials. So you have your Zoom link, an application for the program. The schedule for the program shows all the dates and what modules we'll be doing with what, when we're going to be doing them. Um, and there's a video on an overview. Their prerequisites and requirements are there's no course requirements. And you don't have to be a doula or have had any courses to take this class. You will do a lot better if you have been to a few births. I don't think I would accept somebody who is completely green because we cover a lot of information and it might be a bit overwhelming. So there's a written outline for each module. The modules are explained. Um, the mentorship, what a mentorship is involving. Basically, when you come into the course, you have to hook up with a midwife who you will be utilizing as your mentor. And they will be evaluating your skills and you will be interviewing them for information. For instance, when we cover water births, we cover water births in general, and then you are supposed to go to your midwife and find out what do they do with water birth. And then you report that back. There is a birth assistant skills checkoff sheet that your mentor will work with you. There's a copy of the New Mexico student workbook, which may or may not be useful to you. There's also we take attendance because we do expect you to come to these. We're only doing about 2 weeks for each module, which means we need to really book and boogie. I wanted to show you a Coggle map. I always recommend that people download this because it gives you a view of the entire program. So the first module is an introduction to the birth assistant work. And with that, we cover like what is a birth assistant, the requirements, the qualities, the scope of practice, um, what you do and what you do not do as a birth assistant. The difference between doulas, birth assistants, and midwife assistant and a midwife. Um, Probably midwife apprentice could go in there. The roles and duties of a birth assistant. So that's module 1. Module 2 is birth assistant fundamentals. So we just look at, what are charts, the universal precautions, hand washing, personal protective equipment, the equipment and the supplies that are needed for a birth. We have a bunch of pictures with names so that you are familiar with what is a Kelly clamp, what is the suture kit have, what is an ambu bag, so that you become aware. So if the midwife says, hand me the ambu bag, you'll know what she's talking about. We have instrument kits that we show you and what's included and what they're used for, setting up water births, what you might want to include in a birth assistant bag, cleaning and sterilizing equipment, and cleaning up after birth, so things like laundry and things like that. In Module 3, we do medical terminology and birth vocabulary. This is the one module where you may need to study a little bit. It's basically an introduction to medical terminology and the Latin Greek elements in the English language. So it's things like acrocyanosis. And what does that mean? And if you know what acro means, it means extremities. Cyanosis means a condition of being blue. So it's a condition of the extremities being blue. Well, if you know acro and you know osis and you know cyan, you can figure it out. So that's why it's really important to have a little bit of the medical terminology. We also talk about the abbreviations and the acronyms that are used in birth, like VBAC for vaginal birth after cesarean, CG for Casa Geburt if you're working in this area, how to pronounce things, and the equipment names. Section 4 is really just getting into what happens during a birth. You know, what are the stages of birth? What are the things that can, the P's of labor, which gives you an idea of what can go wrong. And then, how these are broken down. Like first stage has a couple of phases, so does second stage. Vital signs is a series of videos on all the vital signs that we work with. So everything from mom's pulse um, to checking her weight, doing a urinalysis, fetal heart tones, and we cover Leopold's maneuvers so that you can figure out where the baby is in the belly. There's some practice drills that we do by video. And then basically, your record sheet, your vital records and your skills sheet will be completed in this section. So you're doing both vital signs for mother and for baby. The charting and the documentation is a section that we do right before winter break. So you have a lot of time over winter break to kind of play with these. And I'll probably open up the next section so if you have time during the break that you can look at that. So we do everything from, how are you documenting? That comes back to those abbreviations that you learned in the medical terminology section. What are you documenting? Why are you documenting? When they first come in for their labor initial, if you're observing them during labor, if, what are you observing about the placenta, about the immediate postpartum on the mom and the baby? What are you checking on the baby? What are some of the postpartum recommendations and education that you might be expected to teach during the birth? So we do have a little workshop that we kind of do a little real life charting practice with that, which is kind of fun. So the seventh, the seventh section is the medications. So the medications that are used on baby, the medications that might be used on mom, including oxygen on both baby and mom, the procedures, the proper handling of medications, how they're stored, how you're going to draw them up, what we include in a home birth medications kit or an example of one, and the documentation that you need to know about if you're working with medications. We also do a section on herbs used in labor, birth, and postpartum, and what are some of the most common ones, and a little bit about homeopathy and some other supplements that might be used. In section 8, we're doing emergency skills. There is a hands-on, it's 2 to 3 day workshop, depending on how big the group is. We cover things like surprise breech, cord prolapse, what to do if the heart tones are not very good, neonatal resuscitation, shoulder dystocia, postpartum hemorrhage, including the hemorrhage, the shock pants that we have at Casa Geburt, responding to shock, what to do in an eclamptic convulsion, what to do when the baby's sugar is low or they have transient tachypnea of the newborn, how to set up an IV, oxygen setup, placenta issues, and what to do. What are you expected to do if there's an emergency transport to the hospital? Our last section is on the immediate postpartum. Remember, as a birth assistant, you are not going to be responsible for teaching them about good nutrition during pregnancy, and you're not going to talk to them about, their exercise during pregnancy. You also are not going to be talking to them about mastitis, because mastitis is not going to happen in the first few hours postpartum. And as a birth assistant, you're there at the birth, an extension of the midwife, helping her, being her extra pair of hands. And, really being of great assistance, especially if there is an emergency. So, when you're talking about breastfeeding for a birth assistant, we're talking about initiating breastfeeding, making sure there's a good latch, helping mom figure out that there's different positions, and some of the troubleshooting in breastfeeding that you might need to know in the first few hours. Um, Education on not enough milk, we do that, even though that doesn't usually come until later. But it's such a prevalent problem, and a problem that will cause women to stop breastfeeding. So we do cover that. And then preventing the problems in the first few, the first week. What can they do to prevent problems? So that's my Coggle map, a mind map on the birth assistant program. If you have any questions, please comment, and get back to me, either on the YouTube channel or through the WhatsApp group. Thank you for your attention, and hope to see you in this class. Bye.